You're listening to the Let Him Cook podcast, fueled by Cody Road and the Wild Rose Casino Studios. Nigel, we are the morning after Big Monday. Um, got a lot of basketball to talk about, and we're not going to start with Big Monday. So let's go back to last week and this weekend in general. I found myself watching a lot of basketball on Saturday. Are there any games that stood out to you? I got a real sicko one, but I want to hear it from you first. If there's a game, let's look outside of Iowa State, Texas Tech, another game from Saturday that you got into.
Well, since you brought it up, I think you probably saw this one coming. But Duke and Florida State, and not
Sure.
because of the game, but because of the performance from the best TikToker / athlete, maybe of all
Gross.
time, Jared McCain, freshman, had 35 points, 8 for 11 from 3. So, I mean, the guy was absolutely on a tear, just remarkable. I mean, he's been great all year, and yeah, I think he was like two threes away from JJ Redick's record, like for most threes in a
Yeah, he
game.
was.
So that's crazy performance by the freshman. But yeah, definitely McCain's performance at Florida State.
And he was real close to breaking the one game freshman score record. I think JJ Redick has that too. But that list was like
Well, no, he
JJ,
beat that
McCain.
record because
Oh, he did.
Zion
He
had
ended
it.
up beating it.
Zion
Okay.
had 33 against Syracuse a few years ago, and McCain had 35.
Because that was a crazy list. It was like JJ, Zion, RJ Barrett twice.
Yeah,
Like, it was crazy how recent it was too. But I was like, well, freshmen didn't really play at Duke until
yeah. RJ Barrett didn't
2015.
pass the ball either, so I would expect
Right.
him to have that
Just
record.
hooping.
Yeah.
The one for me that I got super into, St. Bonaventure versus Davidson. And this
Gross.
one was in overtime. Dude, that was a
That is a
game to
crazy game
remember.
to be watching on Saturday, but proceed.
CBS Sports Network, butts and seats. And so single overtime, Davidson is down 3, no timeouts. So they got to run the offense, miss it, kick out rebound, like a Bosch to Allen situation, drains it and got fouled. So made the 3 to tie it and is going to the free throw line to win the game. Turns out his foot was on the line, so it makes it a 2. So now the free throw is to tie to send it to double overtime. And then the commentators had it wrong the whole time. There was never a foul on the floor. So once they found out that the foot was on the line and it was just a 2-pointer, time expired while the ball was in the air. So the game's just over. And the team started walking off the court, and the commentators, I don't know if the officials didn't communicate, but the commentators were like, where's everybody going? And the game was just over. It was cinema. It was like one of the weirdest endings. I think the commentators just like missed the landing, but it was incredible to watch. So
Did you see yesterday on Twitter?
shout out
I may have sent
Bonnie's.
it to you. Huh?
Shout out Bonnie's. That's
Yeah.
that's my guys up there.
Did you see on Twitter yesterday? I think I sent it to you. It was IWU versus Texas A&M Commerce.
Oh,
There
yeah,
was like
Incarnate Ward.
Yeah, in Carter Ward. 2 SLC teams, conference foes of Northwestern State. Shout out the Louisiana land and natives. But yeah, they really there's like 27 people at the game yesterday, and after the game and the good game line, they just start having a brawl. And I mean, this is like Pistons Pacers brawl.
Yeah.
Like, they were going at it. And Cyclone Larry, shout out to Cyclone Larry, hilarious. I was crying at this. He was like, "Man, there's like 27 people in the building. They're just doing this for the love of the game. Like, this is what do they gain from this?" It was just so good to see that level of a brawl in that insignificant of a game. Because Pacers, Pistons, like, there's history behind those two teams, and given the context of the years, those are the 2 best teams in the Central Division at the time. So why there's hot animosity and even fans can come get this smoke, I get it, but that is not the game to have that same energy. I mean, I could see a Houston Iowa State, sure, we might as well. It's already a rock fight. Let's make it a fist fight. But just to see that mid-major basketball, just Pistons Malice at the Palace level brawl was it wasn't heartwarming, but it was just hilarious. So I had to give it a shout out.
And to have no energy from your home crowd and still be that pissed off to go punch someone.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's like when Detroit Mercy won and like that one guy rushed the court.
Yeah. Yeah. The one man's court storm.
Who's a better fan, him or Cyclone Jim Carrey?
Oh man. I want to know if he knew he was going to be the only guy to storm the court. Because if
He
he knew
probably
that,
like did it unironically, I would hope.
man, because they were 0-22 going into that game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was
Oof,
just like he like he was just like, yeah. And then like was just out there by himself
that was
and
it. Yeah.
it was sad. But
Oh.
anywho.
All right, let's talk Iowa State hoops, and we got to go back. We got 3 games to get to, so put your seatbelts on. Get a cup of coffee, sit down with us. Cincinnati, and this is kind of a point overall I want to make, Nigel. I feel like even great Iowa State teams in the past have had letdown games, have fallen into trap games, have lost games they probably shouldn't have. And so far, knock on wood, Iowa State has not had that yet. But I feel like both at Cincinnati and home against Texas Tech were 2 opportunities for kind of a letdown spot. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I was like, oh, it became a running joke. It was like 2 turnovers in 2 minutes, 3 turnovers in 3 minutes, and it was like clockwork. And it ended up being 8 turnovers and 3 steals in the first 6 minutes. And Cincinnati looked like they had just they'd rather be anywhere else. And that's just kind of what that Iowa State defense does to you. But my God, was that defense just smothering in the first half against Cincinnati?
Yeah, no, I thought it was just a solid win. And I thought it was a huge Cincinnati specifically was a huge testament to Jones, like just still stepping into that role and becoming more comfortable in that 6-man role. I feel like he's really starting to find his rhythm. And even in a day where, you know, like you said, it's a trap game. And I feel like for when you bring up trap games, a huge opponent that comes to my mind has been OK State, especially in
Yeah.
the TJ era. It's just like it's a team you can't get past, but you should be getting past. But again, like you said, it felt like this was the new OK State, in a sense. And to come out and just really just putting our foot down defensively and kind of setting the tone for the big week that this was, I think it was huge. And I think, kind of setting the tone and us kind of riding that wave into Texas Tech, I feel like it kind of put us in a good momentum for Houston, and it obviously didn't work out. But I feel like it was a great tone setter, like I said, for the week. So
Yeah. And one player I was really looking out for, excuse me, John Newman for Cincinnati is one of the best defenders in the Big 12. And he was on Momcilovic a lot of the night and gave Momcilovic a lot of problems. But Newman had kind of stepped up in the past couple games for Cincinnati as a scorer. And he might have if he finished with points, I think it was at the free throw line late in the game because he wasn't able to get his shot off. He's a senior. The other player for Cincinnati I want to talk about, maybe the best name in college sports right now, Jizzle James, only a freshman. And
pause.
yeah, and he might be a problem for, and no pun intended, years to come because that
Wow.
guy,
Wow.
sorry, that
Wow.
guy is playing at an elite level as a freshman. I think it's pronounced Edgerrin James. I remember him a little bit on like Madden is his dad. And I don't know. I was just really impressed with his game. I mean, he was being guarded by Tamin Lipsey and Keyshawn Gilbert most of the night, and he was making things happen. So if he doesn't transfer out of Cincinnati, that is definitely a guy that might be a problem for a couple of years
Yeah.
for the Bearcats.
Yeah. No, I think too. Just really, I going into the game, I really didn't do much looking in on Cincinnati, but it did feel like because it was on the road, it's a trap game, and
Right.
guys you've never heard of before obviously can have big games, and it just goes to show that like every team in this league has a guy that you may not have heard of before. Some obviously we have heard of, but just it, there's not a day off in the Big 12, and I think even a game like Cincinnati where they've proven to be a solid team despite being one of the newbies. I feel like all the newbies have done a good job kind of like holding their own in a
Yeah.
new conference and handling the fact that this is a gauntlet and that there are no days off in this league.
Yeah, a really complete game. Nigel, we always talk about how important the 4 minutes before halftime, the 4 minutes after halftime are, especially in road games, I feel like, to set the tone. Iowa State won an 18-2 run in that 8-minute stretch before and after halftime. And that was, I think, Keyshawn Gilbert hit a three to go at 41-26. And like, as long as we keep teams 8 points to 12 points away, it is really hard to beat Iowa State in the final 4 minutes if you're down anywhere from 8 to 12 points. I think we've seen that time and time again where a team will kind of chip away back into a game and be within striking distance, but you need to be either tied or ahead against Iowa State in the final 4 minutes, where I would feel comfortable. Just with how good this team has closed games, that is not a place you can be as a team, is down 10 against Iowa State with like 4 minutes left. I just don't see, with the defense and how we've played. I mean, Keyshawn has been solid down the stretch. Momcilovic has hit some huge shots in the final minute of a game. So I think it was just really important to keep Cincinnati kind of at an arm's length in the second half, and they did.
Yeah, and like I said, we know to the officiating, especially on
Yeah.
the road, of what that could what it is in the Big 12. I think to compensate, just to make sure we're not running into an officiating problem with making that another, I guess, crutch in the game. It is important to set the tone defensively, and ending you know forcing 25 turnovers, like, that's nuts. And if we can keep that going, even if it isn't against we don't have the same type of night against Houston, I think staying with that same principle is going to be very beneficial long term, because I feel like yesterday kind of proved that that's probably going to be your Big 12 championship, and you could be playing a Cincinnati in the first round. I don't know how the seeding's looking right now exactly, but a team of that nature could be a first
Right.
round team that Iowa State could run into. And again, like this week, you had to set the tone. It's a good simulation to what the Big 12 tournament could look like potentially. So
Yeah, as of last night, I think Oklahoma, Cincinnati were the 8 and 9, and the winner of that would have played Iowa State, which was the 1 seed going into the Houston game last night. Now we're the 2. So, but Cincinnati very well could be like anywhere from 7 to 10 in the final
right.
standings. So that definitely could be our first opponent in Kansas City. The other thing I want to talk about, this was one of my favorite stats, mostly in non-conference. We did it to TCU and we've done it to one other Big 12 team, but forcing more turnovers than the opponent has made field goals. That stat, dude, just blows my mind. You have more possessions that end in a turnover than a made basket for
Yeah.
40 minutes. I mean, that is just such a brutal way to watch a basketball game as a fan, if you're a fan of that team, frustrating as a coach, as a player. And 12 of those were steals. We talk a lot about unforced turnovers. 12 of those were just cookies. I mean, just like forcing turnovers from good defense, trapping, rotating. I mean, that defense was on point that whole game. And 12 steals in one game is nuts as a team. And that 25 turnovers, almost half of them are steals. Mercy. I mean, they just did not look like they were. I think it's so hard to prepare for Iowa State and the way they play defense. And we'll
Yeah.
get to this as we talk about Houston. Houston and Iowa State might be the only two teams that can prepare for one another with how hard both those teams play defense. Hard to replicate in a practice. Like, I don't know how you even match that intensity without it being the real deal.
Yeah. It's hard to ask your managers to,
Right.
put on some sneakers and play Jamal Shed defense.
Yeah.
It's this kid's a regular student. He's not doing that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think too, it's just like some teams kind of speak the same language. And I feel like Iowa State and Houston, I mean, those if playing defense is the tango,
Yeah.
those two dudes are like Antonio Banderas. They're just
Yeah.
smooth with it. They don't care. So I mean, I think too, it's just like there's tiers when it comes to sickos in our league, and I think right at the top, it's that Monday night matchup,
Yeah.
which looked like a WWE matchup, if we're
Man.
being completely honest. So I think again, those are just two teams that speak the same language, and a team like Cincinnati, although is really decent, I would put them up with that. I'd say Cincinnati record wise is like really close to like Iowa, you
Yeah.
know. So Are they terrible? No. Are they good? No. So it's I don't know. I just feel like it's a good way to start out the week that was this week. And again, I was very satisfied with that win. I was very nervous because I just didn't know much about
Yeah.
Cincinnati. So happy that you walk out with a 9-point win. I mean, I can't complain. So
And then Saturday, and this always scares me, and it happens in Big 12 because of Big Monday. You play a game on Saturday, and then usually it's like one of the biggest games of the season 2 days later, which was the case for Iowa State. And credit to the coaching staff of like not letting the players look ahead on the schedule, because I think as a player, I would have had a hard time being like, all right, we play for basically the number one spot in the best conference on Monday, but now we got to take care of Texas Tech 2 days before. I
yeah,
think it's a hard game to focus on when you have Houston 2 days later.
yeah,
But dude, this was at times, I felt like Iowa State was unbeatable.
hmm
We would play incredible defense for 30 seconds, come right down the court, run an efficient offense. Momcilovic or Lipsy or Gilbert would hit a tough shot, and just it happened time and time again, to the point where, like, if I was Texas Tech, what am I supposed to do, coach? I'm like, we're not doing anything on offense. We come down, we play good defense, and it doesn't matter. We can't.
yeah.
It was incredible to watch. It was one of the best performances I've seen from this Iowa State team to date, especially in that first half, man. This team looked all the part of a Final Four team against Texas Tech.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we talk about turnovers versus uh against Cincinnati, against Texas Tech. I mean, you get 16.
Yeah.
So I mean, just keeping it in that high teen to 20 turnover. I mean, it's going to be hard to win any game if you're turning the ball over at that rate. And just also to be a very efficient, like throughout our starting five, four in the double figures, and they all shot pretty efficiently too. And it's one of those games where like we talk about, I guess, is Iowa State a contender in a game like this? It's like, yes, they are, like without a
Yeah.
doubt, just because they look like they're just kind of clicking on all cylinders. And I feel like, Keyshawn, the last two games has been really big for us. And I feel like he's starting to evolve into that, all right, I know when to get mine, I guess, mentality. And
Right.
sometimes you do need that, especially like yesterday when, you're kind of just playing from behind from the jump and you just do need a spark. I feel like he's kind of been that spark as of late. And 24 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, he's just having complete games as of late. And I think, again, we've made the Ja Morant comparison, but it just seems to be like he's becoming more of that Ja Morant-esque player as the season evolves. And I'm very excited to see what he can do, in the postseason, given that he's playing this well of basketball like late in February.
Yeah. It's been a weird. I think as Keyshawn Gilbert has rised, we've seen Milan Momcilovic kind of not slump, but his point
Plateau.
production. Yeah. And I think a lot of times though, he's drawing the best defender
Yeah.
on against teams. So that leaves guys like Keyshawn and Curtis Jones and Tamin Lipsey. You're going against the second or third best guard, and that, you got to get yours. I mean, that's the matchups that you have to exploit. So, if you want to only let Momcilovic score 10 points, that's fine, but it might end up with Keyshawn getting 24 or Curtis getting 15 off the bench. I think what makes this team so special is you can take one guy away and we're still going to find 3 other guys to get 15 points. So, yeah, credit to Keyshawn for stepping up, because I think he might have started the season in non-conference and even the start of Big 12 play drawing the best defender. And not that he was playing bad, but just Momcilovic is so dangerous on offense that he draws so much attention, and Keyshawn's really been able to exploit some of these matchups.
Yeah, and I
And
feel like our league too, like there's just so much pride like not wanting a freshman to really
yeah,
embarrass you. So I feel like naturally, just having the hot start that Milan had in the year, it's like I could see a Bill Self or a Kevin Sampson being like, we're not gonna have a freshman kill us.
right.
So naturally, you are, yeah, you're right. Keyshawn is gonna have the second or third best defender on the floor at all times, and for if you're gonna put your best defender that would maybe be on Keyshawn initially, but because of the situation, they feel like they need to put him on Milan. That's already a mismatch. So
Right.
whoever Keyshawn is being guarded by is probably guarding out of position, which is also a mismatch. So I mean, it's I guess the ultimate chess move that now the other team they're trying to compensate for it, but it may not work in the long run. And I feel like when Keyshawn is able to have the last 2 games that he did, it's just kind of proof to that's that claim and statement.
Texas Tech only played 7 guys in that Iowa State game, which is not a recipe I would recommend for opposing coaches with how Iowa State plays defense and how hard they make you work. Texas Tech had some injuries. Their big man was in a boot, and they had an injury in the non-conference, so they're down. They've been down 1 guy for a long time, but being down 2 guys against Iowa State is a tough place to be, especially at Hilton Coliseum. Nigel, there's one guy I want to talk about who I cannot stand, and that's Joe Toussaint. And we're going to talk later about Jamal Shed. Joe Toussaint thinks he's Jamal Shed. He acts like how Taman Lipsey or Jamal Shed plays, where he's just like super high intensity, but that's just how he acts. He's not like a super, like lockdown defender. He made some shots against Iowa State late, but he's not like a go get your own bucket kind of guy.
He
He's
had a
doing
pretty
too
good
much.
game.
I know he did, but
He
what are
had
we
a pretty
doing?
good game. I'm not gonna lie.
He's pressing like the whole game and not well. He's just doing it to do it is what I'm like. A lot of the stuff he's just doing to be annoying. It's not effective.
I
I
mean,
was just like,
he did that stuff at West Virginia because of the play style, and then he did it at Iowa too. Like he's never not been annoying.
I'm sick of it.
I get it. I get it.
And
I
it's
can
one
tell
thing
this is
if
personal
you
for you.
if it is if you're like a better player because of you play annoying, like Patrick Beverly's kind of the first guy. Like I think he's an asshole because it gives him an advantage and it's kept him in the league. I don't
Yeah.
even know if it gives Joe Toussaint. Like I don't know if he has to do all that. Just go about your business. Like I don't
Look,
really
man,
think he's getting in guys' heads.
he's a point guard from the Bronx. If you don't think he's
Man,
gonna have a little like a little on he like that's how they are, man. Like that's like telling Curtis Stinson, hey, don't have that dog in you, He'd be like, what? Who are you? That's
I,
just they play with that arrogance and that je ne sais quoi, as it's just I guess I think it kind of just comes with being from New York. I feel like the point guards there they just have that extra pride, and I feel like Tucson is an epitome of that. But I understand your frustration because yes, it's like, bro, go get a job. You've
yeah,
been here since my freshman year in college. This is your 3rd team.
right.
You're still here.
And he's like
Like,
talking back and forth with the student section. It's like, dude, like you've played more games at Hilton than some Iowa State Cyclones have. Like,
and
go away.
no, but I think also if you're playing Iowa State that much naturally in your season, because whether you're at Iowa, you're gonna play them at least once. Whether you're at West Virginia, you might play them twice, and
Yeah,
if you're at Texas Tech, you might play them twice in a year. So, I mean, if you're not gonna play for Iowa State, I would eventually learn to hate Iowa State
sure.
because we're assholes too. Like, let's not get it twisted. You got Jim Carrey in the crowd
Yeah.
doing that. I'd be ready to fight too. So it comes with the territory, and I'm very understanding of the opposition's perspective, and I can get how Joe Toussaint is just I think he can go to bed at night peacefully if he beats us at the end of the day. So
Had a great game in a losing effort.
yeah,
Someone who didn't have a great game in a losing effort, Pop Isaacs, 0 for 7 from 3, 2 for 11 from the field, and his shot. So I've watched a couple of Texas
it's
Tech games.
hilarious.
He's like not a bad shooter, but mechanically that shot is bad. Like it is what like it's just off. Like that is not a smooth looking jumper. And I've seen it go in. So I know it's somewhat effective, but when he was shooting at Iowa State, I was like, maybe just leave him open. It looks like he can't make them. So he really
Well, I wouldn't
struggled though.
say that. It's like every time he shoots, my heart does sink a little
Yeah, I was ready
because
for
I've
one to
seen
go
him go
in.
crazy
Right.
too. So I don't know. It's very like it's got to be balanced and it's got to be like he has enough space in front of him to get it off for it to actually like go in.
Right.
But it is just a very like quick, like high arcing shot, and it just doesn't look like a smart shot. But when it
Right.
goes in, it's like, what can you do? But he's kind of been their guy all year. So
Yeah.
to put emphasis on, let's not have him hit a three, let's not have him get going. Because I feel like a streaky shooter like that, all you need to see is one to
Right.
kind of feel to really get going. And to see him, from the jump kind of just like not find that rhythm, I think it was huge. And I think Texas Tech as a team, because of that, really didn't have an answer. And then you have to kind of rely on Joe Toussaint to kind of do the heavy lifting offensively.
Yeah, and I think Iowa State's done a great job of that. Oftentimes, the opponent's best player has a bad game against us. So, if we take away the best guy, it comes down to supporting cast. And more often than not, these teams aren't deep enough where they can have a lot of guys hurt you. If you take away, a Pop Isaacs from a Texas Tech and make Joe Toussaint, be their hero, I think Iowa State lives with that scenario.
Yeah. Let me just say, while we're on the topic of Pop Isaacs, shooter on the court, shooter off the court, because he he may be a huge reason as to the turmoil for Texas Tech's team chemistry at times.
Yeah.
Because the whole incident he had before the season, apparently he was with one of his teammates' sisters.
Right.
So the kid just doesn't care. He sees a shot, he's taking it.
That can't be good for locker room chemistry. I can't imagine that helps any team bonding moments.
Yeah, no, he lost some VC for that one. So.
Yeah. The last thing I want to touch on in this Texas Tech game, some of the team stat splits sound like a joke. As we mentioned, Iowa State forced 16 turnovers. Texas Tech forced 6 points off turnovers. Texas Tech had 0. Iowa State had 28 points off of turnovers. Woof. Points in the paint, Iowa State had 44. Texas Tech had 22. And then largest lead, Iowa State had a 21-point lead at, I would guess early in the second half, and Texas Tech largest lead was 2 points. Man, by the numbers, tough game to win for Texas Tech. I mean, that's just kind of Iowa State's go-to, get in the paint, get points in transition, and build a lead. And they did all of that and more against Texas Tech. So just kind of a textbook win for an Otzelberger basketball team. And yeah, looked really good. Really gave me a lot of confidence going into Big Monday.
Yeah. And I think too, like we talked about a few weeks ago, I think it was when we played TCU, but it seems to be like we build that lead, and our kryptonite at times can be just teams are doing a better job at getting to the basket. I think as of late, we've done a great job at emphasizing that not happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like even Kevin Sampson complained about it like at halftime, like we got to get in the paint. We have to get paint touches.
Right.
And I feel like despite who we're playing, as long as we make that a point of emphasis of no paint touches for the other team, I feel like you really cannot find a rhythm because it's a lot of just like dribble once, you get cut off, kick out. And it's just not the same effectiveness of you actually get into the paint, you draw 2 people, and then you have an open shooter or something. I just feel like that it's a great offensive killer for the other team. And I think if we make that a point of emphasis defensively, which I feel like we have, and we continue to do that, I feel like we will. I really the rest of the season, if all goes well, I don't see us losing another game.
Yeah.
Like I really don't. I feel like Houston's a great test just to see, how have we improved on the road. I think if we play that same game earlier in the year, so maybe flip-flop, like crisscross, like we play at Houston first, I don't think we have the same as good of a loss, if that makes sense.
Right.
So definitely I feel like we're playing some of our best defense and we're starting to figure it out as we go. But also while we're on the topic of, the Texas Tech game, can we talk about the start Robert Jones had? I mean, that guy was green from the hook shots. I mean, that guy, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought he was going to go for 30. I'm not going to lie. I saw 2 hook shots and I'm like, it's over. It's over.
He,
Go home. Warm up the bus.
he's had some really good finishes, like driving too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he'll drive from like usually on a pick and roll. 2 years ago, that's not happening. Like, I don't
No.
know what would happen, but it's not like a little. I mean, this is very much joking, but like a Giannis Antetokounmpo 2-step, long and lanky, lay it off the backboard.
He's nimble. He's like a
Mm,
deer.
yeah,
Fear the deer. Fear the
it's fun to watch.
Jones.
Fun to watch.
Man, it's like Joakim Noah in 2013, just in his prime. I love it. I don't know who's been working with him with that hook shot, but it is butter.
It's there.
Like, it's like right off the catch, I can tell. I'm like, oh, that's green.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, oh my God, it's going in. Like, he's had a great starts, and I think if he can continue to have great starts, it's gonna be not obviously it's gonna be important, but I feel like it's gonna be huge come, late March if we can make it that far. I mean,
Right.
I feel like Keyshawn, Milan, like those are like obvious guys you're gonna go to in March because you got to go for shot makers, and at the end of the day, guards win you the tournament, in my opinion. But man, what help Rob can be offensively going forward is gonna be huge. So very, very pleased with his play as of late.
Nigel, we've been kind of talking about it the whole time, but let's get into Houston full force here. And I
Yeah.
want to say off the top, this is probably the most nervous I've been for a regular season game as a fan in years. Like, I haven't felt this much excitement, hype. I felt damn near nauseous at around 7:45 last night before this
Mom
game tipped
spaghetti.
off. Man, and it's just a huge moment for this program. You couldn't have told me 4 years ago when we were 2-20. One, it'd be weird to tell me that we're playing Houston for a spot at the Big 12 title. That would have been weird, but just like we're competing, we're ranked 6th. Like, what a turnaround Odds has done. This program has done a 180 in 3 years to where it was to where it is now.
Yeah.
And this kind of felt like an early culmination of all the work that he's put in, this team has put in this year. It just felt like a very big moment for the program. And you brought it up. I think you're exactly right. The home team, when these two teams play, and it'll be so fun to watch if we get to see these two teams play on a neutral court. But both times, the home team has kind of thrown the first punch. Iowa State was up 14-0 at home. And then in Houston, they were up, I think, 17-4 early. And it just felt like a war. Like, I can't tell you how physical each possession almost felt like a football possession of like there is layers. Like, I felt like I was just like living and dying on every possession because 2 points felt like it was 7. I mean,
Yeah.
just things were so hard to come by early on. What about that Houston defense? Like, just talk to how difficult they make it on offense for Iowa State.
I think they make it difficult to the certain degree of like it's a mind F for
Yeah.
Iowa State because it's like playing yourself in the mirror and you're like, what do I do?
Right.
And then I think too, in times where we needed that extra oomph that we got at home and we got from our crowd, like we weren't getting for obvious reasons. We weren't at home. And I just feel like the first punch in a game like this is very important. And Houston made the first punch offensively. If I go back, I forgot his name, but 21. What's his face?
21,
Do you know?
1. Maybe Malik Wilson.
Not Wilson.
No.
Was it Wilson?
Big guy or
He was a guard or a wing. 21. He had like the
Sharp?
first 5 points. Sharp.
Emmanuel Sharp.
Yes, Emmanuel Sharp. Hadn't really remembered him from the first matchup. Like I don't remember him having that big of an impact.
He had a good game against us at Hilton because Cryer
Okay,
played terrible against us.
Yeah. I was more worried about Shed and Cryer going into when we had
Right.
them in Ames. But yeah, no, I think just a game like this where whoever offensively can make the first punch, I think is obviously going to have enough pad, to be able to kind of work with, because a team like us is still gonna like keep it ugly, and to go into halftime 28-23, that's like Butler UConn 2011 national championship. That's gross.
Yeah.
And I was very not disappointed, but I'm like, man, that first punch is really important. And it's almost like if you don't make that first punch, it's going to be a close game, but you're going to run out of time. You're not going to have enough time to throw another punch, if that makes sense.
Right. And I
So
think go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
The only thing I was gonna like, you also have a limited amount of punches in a game like this because it is so tiring and you get so knocked around and beat up. It's hard to go on a 10-0 run 30 minutes into this game for either
Yeah.
team. I mean, just the way these two teams play basketball, it's hard to be that to play with speed and energy. And Houston, I'm trying to remember what they call the stat, but it's basically like a kill. I don't remember what it's called, but it's going on a
Kill
10-0
shot.
kill shot.
I
That
think
is what
that's
it is.
what Frank Pachulia called it.
Going on a 10-0 run, Houston has more of those than any other team in the country. I think the difference is they're not playing against, like, they do not have to work that hard on offense usually as they did against Iowa State. And,
Yeah.
Same vice versa. Iowa State usually expending a lot of energy on defense, but usually the defense they're facing isn't the best in the country like it was against Houston. So
Yeah.
you kind of got to, I think the first punch is so important because you're so goddamn tired, in the second half of that game. It's like, I don't have any punches left. Like it's just like living and trying to get to the next possession at that point. So the start was big. The other thing, I don't want to touch on it for long, but I think it does need to be said. Officiating felt inconsistent, and that might
When
be
does
one
it
of the
not?
yeah, that might be one of the harder games to officiate just because of how physical it is. But I think at some point you have to be, that much contact, we're going to call a foul every time. And it felt like, at certain times there'd be a lot of contact and you wouldn't call it. And then maybe 5 minutes later, the other team does it and they get called for a foul when I felt like it was less contact. And it went both ways. I would say the first half favored Houston, but in the second half, Iowa State definitely got some calls. So it's so hard to officiate those two teams because I think you could call a foul every single possession if you really wanted to and make a justification for it. But it's just another thing to get you out of your rhythm. Like those whistles, like you kind of start to get, you get a couple baskets down, go down, you're driving to the lane, get hit by three guys, throw something up thinking you got fouled because you did. And then they just say that's a, live ball and then a defensive rebound. So that just sucks. That played a small part into it. I think the second half got better, and I think we got some calls in the second half. But that first half, I think, was just another thing that took Iowa State out of their rhythm.
Yeah. It felt like, too, we were just like, it felt like we were always down more than we were.
Yeah.
And
100%.
it just felt like we were playing like down 10 from the jump. And I feel like a big part in that was we went like 4 minutes without scoring.
Yeah. Early.
And that's unacceptable. We can't have that. But given that we did go through all that, to shoot 52% too from three, I was impressed with that. And I think that's another testament to Keyshawn and Curtis of just what they've been able to do as of late. Curtis shooting 60% from three off the bench. I feel like he was big for us. And I think he's always going to be that guy with guys like Taman, guys like Keyshawn, guys like Milan in the starting lineup. It's like, even if you're playing as hard as Houston does defensively, it's like, oh, damn, I forgot about that guy. Yeah. And I feel like that's what he can really hurt you. And, I really don't think Taman didn't play the best game. I think if he has 12 points, we win that game.
Right.
So again, a very uncharacteristic performance from Mr. Lipsy, but I'm sure TJ's already on him about it. And like the few goose eggs he's had, earlier in the year, TJ has held him accountable and he's asked more of him in those situations. And I'm sure he's going to do the same now. But yeah, we just need more production, obviously, out of Taman going forward.
And I think a big part of that, Nigel, I was talking to you during the game last night and right before we started recording, Jamal Shed might be my favorite player that's not a Cyclone.
Boo.
That guy's a dog.
That guy stinks.
He's just, especially during like the Hoiberg and Prom years, we would play guys like that. And I'm like, God, I wish we had a Cyclone that just like balled out like that guy does on defense from a leadership standpoint, taking over a game if he needs to, knocking down free throws. Like he's just a winner. And
I mean, I think Taman can do that by year 4.
I think so too.
But it's like, then don't go to the league,
Right. And I think
So
like Lipsy has even shown signs of that now, but mostly when we were bad and when I was in college, I would see guys like Mark Vidal or just like guys kind of that blueprint of just make winning plays all the damn time. Frank Mason, another guy, like I'm just really impressed by it. And I think that's part of why Lipsy had a bad game. He had Shed
yeah,
guarding him a majority of that game, and he's one of the best defenders in the country. And I really think, and this is no shot at Zach Edey, that man's tall, but I think Jamal Shed is the best player pound for pound in the country. I'm just, and I'll stand by that. Like I think he should win the Bob Cousy Award, and I think he should really be in running for the Naismith Award. I've been so impressed by what he's done. I think people thought LJ Cryer was going to come into Houston, get the keys to the offense, and put on a show. And it's been the Jamal Shed team. I mean, he is no doubt the leader of that team. And it's also a cool story that both of those guys have known each other and been playing hoops together since third grade. That's just
yeah.
another. It's hard for me to root against this Houston team because they're so much like Iowa State. It's just like they have black instead of gold on their uniforms. Like it's like you said, looking in a mirror. And I just love watching these two teams play gritty, just rock fight basketball. Like that's my favorite kind of basketball. And it was a clinic last night of that exact kind of style.
Some of my favorite brand of basketball. I'm more of the bucket for bucket. Like
Sure.
I think one of my favorite games of all time that I didn't have a dog in the fight, but I was just like, wow, was 2015 national semifinal, Kentucky versus Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Just ooh.
Some
Go
dudes.
if you're ever bored, go watch that game in full, please. You will not regret it. That bro, I forgot how many dudes were in that gymnasium.
Yeah.
It was impeccable. And I again, do I like the way Iowa State plays? Yes, because it makes a lot of teams in the country uncomfortable. But if I could choose, if I could have the perfect life, I would love Iowa State to just go bucket for bucket with the team because those type of games, they give you butterflies as a fan. You're like, what is gonna happen next? Like,
Yeah.
and I just feel like the rock fight as a fan at times, like you get tired. You're like, damn, bro, can someone make something happen? And they're just still throwing haymakers at each other. I'm like, all right, score the ball. We get it. We get it, bro. And then Jamal, I look at the box score. Jamal Shed has 30. I'm sick. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. But again, for an older team like Houston, this is exactly how I would expect them to respond on their home floor, given how good they've played this year. I could just see Kevin Sampson just probably juicing these boys up all weekend about this.
Yeah.
Like calling Jamal soft. You got bodied by a sophomore, like probably saying crazy stuff. And
Right.
Shed's just like listening to Young Boy before the game, probably. Just like, I'm not going to take this anymore. And, he obviously took it personal because the polarizing stat line between those two, who, again, have similar play styles, can do a lot of the same things, can impact winning at the same high level. I mean, one had a great day, one did not.
Yeah.
And the one did not was playing for the Cyclones, and that's okay.
Right.
We all have those days, and I think Taman stays off 4 years. I think you will see Jamal Shed esque, DeAndre Kane-esque, performances out of him. So I think, going forward, we got to keep the faith, but today the big brother won.
Yeah. And shockingly, I would have not have predicted this. Iowa State out rebound Houston 39-30 and out offensive rebounds them. Houston is one of the best offensive rebounding teams, and they have been almost the whole time Sampson's been there. They were almost an anomaly last year with how well they offensively rebound. They took a step back, but I still think they're top 10 in the country. And then the other weird thing is Houston forced 20 turnovers and Iowa State only forced 9. And really what I think this game comes down to, yes, Taman Lipsy had a bad game, but unforced turnovers by Iowa State and free throw shooting. And almost in any game we've lost, you can kind of look at those two things and be like, we didn't win the turnover battle, which is such a huge part of Iowa State's success, and then struggled from the free throw line. And both of those things happened last night. And the one that sticks out to me, there's actually, I'll say two. Early in the game, Rob Jones has a great steal on a trap near the out of bounds line and then throws like a post route down the court. And I don't know if he thought it was either Lipsy or Gilbert on the run out. I think he thought they were the only guys back there. but Emmanuel Sharp, it almost went right to him. It was like a quarterback to a tight end in the red zone. So that was just
Yeah.
like, you can't do that against Houston. And then the other one, Keyshawn Gilbert, I think got a little tunnel vision, maybe from like the 6-minute mark to the 4-minute mark in the second half, where he was trying to do a little too much. He wasn't really looking at the whole court. He was either trying to break his guy down or was looking directly at the guy who's setting the screen, but not really taking into account the whole offense. And he just tried to force a bad pass to Robert Jones, and it got stolen at a critical point in the game. I think Iowa State's maybe down 5. So there's just some blown opportunities, I think, where we could have gotten points. Keyshawn Gilbert misses some free throws. He went 0 for 2 at least once. And it's just little things. And if you want to beat the best team on the road, you gotta be perfect on little things. And that's a
Yeah.
lot to ask for, because I think we got a lot of the big things right. Out rebounding Houston is crazy. But it's just and shooting over 50% from 3. Like there are places we put ourselves in to win this game, but it's just little things that I think kind of messed us up down the stretch.
Yeah. It'll have TJ biting his lip in
Yeah.
frustration as we saw last night.
Yeah.
I
He
think
was
that was just an epitome of the game. He's just like, "Oh, man."
right.
like just not okay. Like, man, like it's so frustrating when you can almost like you see some light at the end of the tunnel, and then a rock just falls in front of you, and now it's
Yeah.
dark, and it is what it is, man. I really thought we were gonna get like the basketball gods were really doing us a solid this year. I thought we were only gonna play Kansas and Houston once,
Yeah.
and both at Hilton. And it was a schedule like that, man. Give us Texas twice.
Sure.
We might be looking at number 2 in the country soon. Just
Yeah.
kind of by the really the solid wins we've had this year. But I think do you think this loss hurts us going forward?
No, and I went on Ken Palm right after the game, and we stayed at where we were. I think we're 8th in the country right now on Ken Palm, and we didn't move up or down. So, like,
But I'm saying for the AP poll, do you think we drop from the
oh,
loss?
I mean, maybe one spot, like because I think we're right in front of Duke. If Duke wins both their games this week and we go 1-1, maybe Duke leapfrogs us. But
Yeah.
I mean, like we covered. If the AP wants to take that into account, we were depending on where you got it, 9.5, 8.5 underdog.
Vegas loves Iowa State for that.
Lost by 8. So no, and that's like you saw Marquette just get stomped by UConn when they went to UConn. They were the 4th ranked team. UConn's number 1. And I think
Also,
Marquette is like 7.
They scare me. UConn.
UConn.
Why the hell are they that good still?
Oof.
I thought Jordan Hawkins was gonna be gone, and they were gonna be
Right.
like, "Oh well, what are you gonna do?" Like the 14 to 15 year, how they
Yeah.
just kind of fell off. I thought they're gonna have the same fall off, but no,
Nah.
they got this Spencer kid from the transfer portal. He's JJ Redick. Okay, like they have problems. They have their own Milan in what's his face, white guy number 11. What's his name?
I don't know. They got that 7-2 center.
Donovan.
Klingen.
Yeah,
Klingen.
they got some guys. And they were deep last year, so it's like they just have the stragglers this year,
Right.
and they're still making stuff happen. But that's because Dan Hurley is a sicko. Like he's not okay in the head. He slapped a player in the face after beating Syracuse, and then just went to go shake Boeheim's hand like nothing happened. So, that whole family eats nails for breakfast, and I think. I don't know, man. We talk about being top 10, but I don't know anybody who's beating UConn right now. I really don't.
I think UConn and Houston have set themselves apart as different beasts. And I know Iowa State kept it close. Houston beat the brakes off of Texas in Houston. I don't know if there's a tougher, and I've heard this a lot, that like college basketball has no elite teams this year. Watch a Houston or a UConn game and tell me those two teams aren't elite.
Yeah.
Like the way they just play basketball and make it so hard on their opponent. I get that they like Jamal Shed should be a household name. Donovan Klingen is up there with a household name. They don't have a guy that like everybody in America knows, but those two teams are as good as it comes in college basketball. So
yeah, I think people are still kind of like hungover on like Zion.
Yeah.
Like, and it's been 5 years now. Like,
Yeah.
I think people just don't. I think it has to be that level of what the hell, like
Right.
for people to be like, oh, this is insane. Like, this is a great college player. And you're just not going to get that. And I feel like you have to be an actual fan to see who pound for pound are the guys each year. And I think a lot of people just don't have the time or patience. There's a lot of casuals that are about to come out in the next month, acting like the
Right.
biggest college basketball fans in the world. And it's really annoying because those people tend to have the best brackets too, which
Right.
pisses me off. So
Yeah. Tell me about it. I spend about, I don't know, 5 hours a week doing DPI just for the fun
Dylan's
of
up
it.
at 3 a.m. Like, come on, this 14 seed.
I'm watching St. Bonaventure any given Saturday just to pass the time and standing on my feet in anticipation of a game-ending shot. So, yeah, and of
Meanwhile,
course, it's like
you'll have like a handful of KCCI employees that just like pick like mascots, like
right.
who has the cuter mascot, and they just get to the Final Four. It's sickening. It's
It's
sickening.
like the secretary that takes Iowa men to the Final Four because she thought they had Caitlin Clark on their team and it was a women's bracket, and
It's
that
like,
bracket
wait,
ends up better than mine, and I'm looking around like, "How did what?"
who invited this? Who who
Oh,
who invited her to the party?
it's brutal, man. It's brutal. Speaking of something casuals aren't watching, Aiden, I don't know if you have this locked and ready to go with Nigel. I sent this to you, and I laughed for a solid minute. Jackson Pence was the one who found it, and I'm not sure why he
Todd
was looking.
Jackson.
Maybe Jaron Holmes retweeted it, or maybe he follows the Leicester Riders Twitter page. But we have maybe one of my favorite calls of all time in a basketball game. And I think this is at the end of a quarter or maybe going into halftime.
Here's Jaron Holmes. Oh, goodness, off the glass. Calling in. Jaron Holmes calling in the big triple on the buzzer off the glass. Hold that.
On the buzzer off the glass. I just like,
Bloody brilliant, bruv. Bloody
it?
brilliant.
Isn't it incredible? I just like, it makes me want just like two random British soccer commentators on like at least one big time CBS game a year. Cause that made
Preferably Iowa State, Kansas, but
that would be awesome. It was just like a whole different way of me watching basketball. I was like, it was like culture shock. I was like, why are these like soccer dudes talking about beautiful off the glass, isn't it? I was just like, it threw me for a loop. It was incredible.
I mean, in a sense, basketball is soccer.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to score a goal at the end of the day. It's just a smaller goal.
Right. And you can use your hands.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big.
So it's just you're just changing up the limbs, no big deal.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I mean, principle wise, it like I remember like it was like how I realized I was a good FIFA player because I've been playing 2K all my life.
Right.
And when I played, all my friends that just played FIFA, like, you're pretty good at this. And then one of my friends, David, he was like, oh, it's honestly, you play 2K a lot, so it makes sense how you would be good at this because it's kind of like the same similar
Right.
principles. You're just trying to like get the ball up the floor to then put it in the goal, So I feel like soccer commentators could definitely give basketball a shot and be pretty good at it. Because it's the same principle at the end of the day. It's just, different limbs.
Right.
You can dunk, which I think would bring a huge emotional aspect out of them, and it would be very entertaining. I think we should definitely start a petition or something to get some soccer guys in here calling games if like John Walters comes down with like the common cold or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, get some guy from Leicester City to fly over the pond. There is something just incredible about a British man with like a thick British accent losing his mind over sports. Gets me every time. It's just incredible to listen to.
But yeah, I think just going forward for the rest of the season, you got West Virginia at home. Those boys are in for it.
Yeah, that's
go out on a limb and say, we don't even pack your lunch. Just take the beating and go home because it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
OU, we need our lick back.
Yep.
Going to UCF, gonna be a tough environment.
That one scares me a little. I'll say that.
If you can play at Cincinnati and set the tone, I like a 3:00. It's better than the 7 p.m. start against BYU. I don't like that, even if it's
home
at
game
home.
though. Home,
I know.
I think,
but we know TJ, he's up at 5 in the morning doing chest. I don't know if he's going to be same energy level. So I need, maybe if we have a later wake up time that day, that might help the
Sure.
boys. But I just see it. I don't know. If the 1 p.m. games, I love 11 p.m. games. I love, because it's just, I feel like this team is a morning team. This team just plays better in the early afternoon, morning games. You get to 5, 7 o'clock, we can be a little shaky. And yesterday was a prime example
8
of
o'clock.
like, yeah, we played well, but that first punch is hard to do at 8 o'clock at night, because team's probably already been up since 6. Just being sickos. So
Right.
I feel like the rest of the regular season is very winnable. I feel like at Kansas State is playing terrible basketball.
Bad.
Like, I haven't seen a fall off this hard since Jermaine Dupri in the early 2010s. Seeing him in the Super Bowl, I'm like, you're still alive?
CeeLo Green, is that you?
Bro looked like mini me out there. It was but yeah, Kansas State, Jermaine Dupri, same thing.
Kansas State, I feel bad that everyone has to cheat against them to go for Kansas State to go 1-7. It's crazy that all 7 teams they lost to are probably cheating and doing something illegal. BYU, I think BYU has to kind of be the game circled for this Iowa State team out of the last 5. I think we just kind of got embarrassed in Provo. I think they took advantage of kind of a hole in our defense, and I really hope we just come out and whoop on them. And BYU has fallen off a little bit. They've lost some games they probably should have won in the last 2-3 weeks. So I got that one circled for sure. And then, if we can just go down to Manhattan, just
go to lunch in a Jewish community. That's all we got to do.
That's really, and then Houston, for those still interested in the Big 12 race, they are at Baylor on Saturday. Then they have 3 pretty winnable games. And then their last game of the season is home against Kansas. Houston defeated at home, but Kansas is no, light work. So there's still a chance. Iowa State probably has to win out. Houston has to drop to Baylor and Kansas. And then I think Baylor is a half game back on Iowa State right now. So what I'm saying, basically, if we were to beat Houston, a lot easier road to the Big 12 championship regular season, still a path. Just a lot of things have to happen.
I still think, the path is there. It's just, you're going to have to now do it as a 2 seed probably, but it is what it is, man.
Yeah. Hey,
hell of crazier things happen.
We have. And overall, I think as long as we didn't lose by 20 against Houston and just get absolutely dominated, like, this hasn't changed my perspective of this team at all. I think we still are, maybe a dark horse Final Four team, and easily one of the best 4 teams in the Big 12, which is as good as it's ever been. So
right.
This game from Big Monday didn't, dishearten me. If anything, I was like, man, Houston is really good. The guard play, like you said, guards win in March. I'm not sure if there's a better backcourt in basketball than Shed, Cryer, and Sharp. Like, those 3 guys can go. So Houston, definitely a team to look out for in March. I hope Iowa State sees them again in Kansas City, and maybe in Phoenix. I ain't saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you see us, if we see them again in Kansas City, I think we can get them. Because honestly, to beat a team 3 times is hard and almost impossible at times, especially a team like Houston. But the series split, going to Hilton South, I like those odds. So give us Houston in the Big 12 championship, and I'm all for it. So rest of the season, we just got to finish strong. It's definitely still some get back games in that stretch, but if we finish strong, I feel really confident going into not only the Big 12 tournament, but obviously, March.
Yeah, I think Cyclones got to lock in. 5 games left, and really we've weathered the storm. We have played the toughest part of our conference schedule. Now it's time to finish business and get to Kansas City, get to the postseason. So I like where we're at.
Same.
Nigel, any parting shots before we get out of here? There's no Taylor Swift to complain about. We already talked about Duke. I'm trying to think. LSU women, are they doing anything? And any?
They beat Texas Tech. I mean, A&M yesterday, but I mean, they're kind of same old.
Okay.
But something I did want to bring up I want to give a shout out to Tyrese Halliburton for his performance in his first All-Star game. 32 points, very impressive. Started off really hot from three, really trying to do his best Reggie Miller impression out there. But something I do want to give credit to, dribbling on the break, pulls out the Jason Williams elbow pass. Wasn't the best pass, but it still was in reaching distance to where our MVP Damian Lillard could pick it up and get a shot off. That's all that matters, because if you go back and watch the Jason Williams highlight, it's the same thing. It's just like he did the elbow tap, the guy got fouled and he missed a layup. So still a missed shot. I mean, but it's kind of the same result. So for him to pull that out, man, the cojones on that guy, just he seizes to amaze me, and I'm so, it's so cool to see someone of his story, and obviously he's from Iowa State, but to see him really getting the national attention that he's getting now, it's very deserving. And I was very, very happy to see Tyrese do well in his first All-Star game. So that's all I got.
In the skills contest, the Indiana Pacers, it was him, Mathurin, and Miles Turner. And not that like everybody's tuning into All-Star Weekend for the skills contest, but the Pacers won that. And then he had a pretty good showing in the three-point contest as well. But yeah, Damian Lillard, I think Damian Lillard and Tyrese Halliburton were the two clear like winners of our All-Star Weekend. Like guys that like really put on a show in Indianapolis.
Luka and Jokic just pissed me off.
Man, how are those guys good?
I like Luka. I like Luka. I know you don't like Luka, but like those two together, like we get it. You don't care. If you don't care, don't come. Like get fined. Like I'm sure there's someone else who wanted to come to an All-Star game. Right. If you guys really don't care that much, but like I don't know. We got to find some sort of incentive, I guess, to just make it a tad bit more, competitive, because you do kind of lose people once we get to 190 and stuff. Yeah. And it is what it is, man. I mean, I know people don't want to get hurt in a game like that, but we got to find something. There's got to be some pride in that game.
I really think USA versus the world is the way to sell it. Like, I think that would make the USA guys have some kind of pressure similar to the Olympics of like, if you lose, that's a tough look. Like basketball is such an American thing. Historically, I know the world has caught up in large strides, but there's still this sense of pride of like, it is our sport. We're going to put on. I think that'd be the way to do it. And then you might get Luka Doncic actually trying instead of getting rim stuffed on a self alley-oop and looking like a bozo out there. Come on. In the All-Star game, you're getting rim stuffed?
Hey, man. Everyone
Go back to the 3-point line. What are we doing, Luka? All right, that's all I got. That's all I got. Iowa State, West Virginia this Saturday, 1:00. Still ranked 6. I think we'll still be top 10 next week. Roll Cyclones.
Yeah, let's go. Let them cook.